She's just used the word that I didn't want to hear about myself. You know, your problem is when you get drunk, you're ugly. What?
No, it's a very difficult thing to do, breakfast television, isn't it? And it didn't go well for you, Michael. Sir Michael, it's taken me a long time to get you in that chair.
Yes.
How are you feeling about being on the receiving end?
I like being interviewed, so far. No, I like talking about myself. People do, don't they? You know, and looking forward to a grilling from you.
I have not put as much work into any interview in my life as I have for this one.
Oh, really?
I daren't make a mistake.
That's a compliment.
I mean, I went through your life and I started mentally ticking boxes, you know. Local newspaper journalist, national newspaper journalist, television chat show host, did morning TV, married somebody far better than himself. I thought, my God, we're twins.
We've had parallel careers. We both, worked in Fleet Street, came into tell it a good time. I just think we've had a charmed life, quite frankly.
Are you Sir Michael now? Are you Michael or are you Parky? How do you like to be called?
Well, Parky's all right, if you know me well. I never used Sir Michael in professionally at all.
Do you use it to get a good restaurant table? Not that you need to. I mean,
No, I don't. Well, I do. Now and again.
Do you, like me, see yourself essentially as a journalist?
Yeah, that's on my passport. That's where I am, I've practiced my craft all the way through both newspapers and television and enjoyed it. Never for one moment regretted it. I've been in television now for 63 years and journalism for longer than that. And the only thing I've ever known for is being attacked by a bloody emu.
But do you worry that when you finally die, and God forbid it's not for a long time, it'll be emu star dies?
Exactly.
That's attacked by emu dies.
That is all they will say.
We worked out that in your 60-year career, you've asked your guests over 80,000 questions.
Gosh.
What would be the first question you would ask yourself?
Would you rather play cricket for Yorkshire than all that's happened to you?
That's what your father would have liked you to do.
Well, and I love my father. My father was the best man I ever met. And he said to me one day, he said, you've had a good life, lad, haven't you? I said, I've done. He said, and you met a bobber too. I said, that's true. He said, you've interviewed some fantastic people, some beautiful women. But it's not like playing cricket for Yorkshire, is it?
When you're being interviewed yourself, what do you look for in interviewers?
Good listener. Eye contact. A situation where you can see them relaxing. You need to be close enough to be able to touch. There's got to be an intimacy about
Are we close enough, or...?
Well, darling, I'd like to come a bit nearer.
You've been succeeded by a number of talk show hosts. I want to go through them and get your verdict. Graham Norton.
I think Graham Norton's a very clever performer. But what he is a party giver. And he gets people together, he bangs them on, and he creates this kind of fun party atmosphere.
Jonathan Ross? Do you rate him as a chat show?
I always have done, yeah. I mean, he's lasted the course, and anybody who does that gets my vote.
There's only one person on television doing this longer form interview with big stars.
Who could this be?
I wonder who I might be talking about, Oh, that would be me.
You are what I expect you to be. You're a properly trained journalist. So you know how to ask a question. You are provocative. You are fearless, and sometimes you're a total twerp.
Tony Blair said the same thing to me. Did you ever imagine, growing up as a young boy in this Yorkshire mining village, that one day you would be not just interviewing all these extraordinary, iconic figures, but very much be at their level?
I couldn't have even thought about it. I was quite happy just working my local paper, basically. But I love movies. I grew up watching Hollywood movies. I knew what New York looked like before I knew what London looked like, And so I had these fantasies about marrying film stars. I was going to marry Lauren Bacall. She was my first on my list. And so I had this fantasy life, and the thought that I would ever get to meet them, I mean, just wasn't on at all. And so part of my life had been like living a daydream, because then I came to a point where I said, ladies and gentlemen, my next guest is Ingrid Bergman. And on she walked. Gobsmacked I was. It was a great time to do a talk show, because that generation of film stars who Cagney and Fred Astaire, I mean, like that,
amazing.
My great heroes were all allowed for the first time to come on to television. They've not been allowed to do this ever in their lives. You know, they're controlled by the studio, and it was just a wonderful time.
Just want to stay on some of the big guests you had. Madonna, you spent years pursuing her as a guest.
We did.
How did you finally get her to come on?
I think she just got tired of me asking, basically. Well, I liked her immensely, and she's a good interview. I mean, she was very frank, she was funny.
She brought a huge entourage with her, Madonna.
Well,
one of them had a particularly weird job.
It was this one girl who came on, and she had a long stick, and on the end of it was like a ball of cotton wool. And I thought, what the hell is she going to do with that? She was standing there looking meaningful. Then when the rest had finished, she went forward and she pushed it up her nose and I thought she'd got a job picking her bogies. I wonder how you advertise that.
John Lennon was a guest on your first series.
Yeah.
But he said he'd only talk to you about the Beatles if you sat inside something to do the interview. What was that?
A sack. Exactly. And, I liked him an awful lot.
George Michael was hilarious when he said,
well, yeah.
you know, his mum probably would have hoped he'd finally make Parky without getting his willy out. What was he talking about?
Well, he's talking about when he exposed himself to a policeman in Los Angeles. I have to say that I was totally actually smitten by him.
Very charming guy, George.
And bright.
Yeah, very
bright, yeah. And he was fun.
Yeah.
He did leave halfway through an interview making some kind of excuse and came back 5 minutes later a lot happier than
Tony Blair actually invited himself onto your programme. It was after the Iraq War. His reputation had taken a bashing.
He was a very interesting man, Blair. And also he was a very good interviewer. And you know, I asked him that question on the show about God. You know, when you go to war, do you pray to your God? He wasn't expecting it, and I don't think he'd either really thought it would ever happen. Often that sort of awkward moment is more powerful than 10 sentences.
How important is silence in an interview?
Very, very. Alan Wicker told me that. Wicker said, you know the best question? I said, no. He said, the silent nod. Because he said, and it was absolutely true, you're used to silence, they're not. And so they feel obliged to, and often they'll say something very silly or something.
Because they're filling...
They're filling it.
What they perceive to be an awkward moment.
That's right, they're blushing, but you're not.
When you first joined the BBC in 1966, most of the other presenters were classic BBC cut-glass accents. And here you come, Michael Parkinson from Barnsley.
I mean, there was certain resistance at the BBC toward me. I mean, there was one person on the BBC Board of Governors who actually complained about my accent. My voice was too vulgar for the BBC, but then she made this wonderful remark. If he could take elocution lessons, he might have a chance. And also, staying at the BBC might improve his talent as an interviewer.
You were born on the 28th of March, 1935, in Cudworth, this small mining village in South Yorkshire.
People assume when you're born in a mining village that somehow you're kind of dispossessed, you're part of a lost tribe. It wasn't true, you know, at all. I thank God every day of my life I grew up in that society. And also, too, I had great parents. They were wonderful, who persuaded me that there was another life outside of mining, maybe.
Your father took you when you were 11, didn't he, down to Grimethorpe?
Yeah, my dad was a deputy, like a foreman. And we went down the pit, it's this huge sort of pit shaft a mile down. You go down like a soil, you hit the bottom there.
And do you remember this vividly?
Vividly. It was hot, it creaked, the place made noises, you know. You're aware all the time of these pit ponies wandering around and all. It was just...
The smell?
So terrible. It was an awful smell down there. My father said, what do you reckon? I said, not for £1,000 a shift. And he said, delighted to hear you say that. But I have to tell you, he said, that if ever I see you at the pit gate, I'll kick your ass all the way home. And my mother, too, was even more determined than I was. She was an extraordinary lady, my mother. She'd gone to university had she been in a different time. And she used to design knitwear for Peyton and Baldwin's. And she would do it in the most extraordinary way. She would take me to the movies 4 nights a week, right? She'd sit on the back row and she'd get the knitting bag out and she'd start going click, 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 click. Watching Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall and all that sort of stuff. And then at the end, when the lights went up, she like that. She had a Fair House sweater. I mean, she was not quite, but she was...
famous people wore these
Well,
sweaters.
they did.
So Roger Moore.
Paul McCartney
wore one.
Wore one. Yeah, and I used to go home and I used to type them out, these patterns for her. And she made, well, I think 15 quid or something like that. I don't know.
What do you think you got from your mother? What kind of characteristics?
I got the ambition. And she lived her life through me in many, many ways. She was a very bright woman indeed. She was ambitious all her life about doing extra things, going extra places, you know. And so I got that from her too.
It's your 60th year married this year.
Yeah.
How important has she been to you?
Oh, she's been my life, really, and I've been hers, I suppose. It's not been a quiet partnership at all, and it's not been without its ups and downs, and I misbehaved badly when I was on the booze. She's a very remarkable woman, actually.
She keeps sort of away from the limelight these days. She used to be on television herself, but she didn't want to be here, for example, on camera.
She doesn't like it. She won't talk about herself to me. The thing that I've always admired about Mary in our relationship was she's never stopped me from changing. Never, ever interfered at all.
Your father, what I loved was his love of Yorkshire cricket was so fervent that in those days, to play for Yorkshire, you had to be born in Yorkshire.
He did.
And he basically kidnapped your pregnant wife.
He did. Yes, I had a perfectly reasonable arrangement with the National Health Service in Manchester. He rang me up, he said, "Job's done." I said, "What job is that?" he said, "Mary." I said, "What about Mary?" "I moved her." I said, "You moved her?" He said, "Aye." He said, "I moved her to Wakefield, to a nursing home." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, Manchester's in bloody Lancashire." I said, "And?" He said, "Well, if he's born there, he can't play for Yorkshire."
Your father's death was obviously a huge moment in your life. Did you realise just how bad his health was?
I knew there was an inevitability about an early death as soon as he was diagnosed. You know, you could see him withering away, in a sense. And for a man as vigorous as he was, it was like watching leaves fall from a tree. The extraordinary thing that I'd seen people killed in war zones. I'd seen dead bodies and all that. But I'd never seen anybody I loved die, and somebody that died. The thing that remains in my mind and kind of nags me like a nightmare is that he had 2 guys came along to actually take the body away. And I didn't want to see that at all. And so I went downstairs with Mary, was standing at the bottom of the stairs. And they had a little bag. He was in it. I couldn't bear the thought. Like a parcel. I'm sorry about that. I see the image very clearly, and I thought it's got to be more than that, you know. Sort of carry him out in a little plastic bag.
Did you get a chance before he died to say all you wanted to say to him?
Yeah, well, he knew. He knew how much I loved him, and I never found it difficult to say that to him at all. No, to me, that he was a funny guy, and I just wish I'd been as nice a man as him.
And he did, fortunately, live long enough to see you do some incredible things. I mean, when he watched you interviewing Muhammad Ali,
oh, well, that was hilarious.
he was the biggest star in the world, in many ways.
He was at the show when we had that row.
Yeah.
I mean, it was nasty, that row. I mean, it's one thing rowing with a jockey, but Christ, when you're having a row with a 16-stone heavyweight champion. I was upstairs in the dressing room. There was a knock on the dressing room door. And I opened it, and there's my dad. He said, "Can I ask you a question now, Michael?" I said, "You can, Dad, yeah." He said, why don't I thump him? You're lucky to have a parent like that. And I apologise I said, was it you wanted to make me weep, you bastard?
You know what I always think, though? It would always surprise me if somebody wasn't emotional, actually,
I think
about the people who meant the most to them in their lives.
that you really care for, and they really cared for you.
After your father died, you went through a pretty heavy period of drinking too much. And
I did.
I guess went slightly off the rails. Was that a direct consequence, do you think, of losing your
Am
father?
I making excuses? Fleet Street, I mean, it was like Dodge City without the sheriff.
And the whole Fleet Street was just littered with pubs.
Absolutely. And so you go there and you drink and you drink and you drink and you wait for the phone call. If the phone call never came, you just continued drinking. And it didn't suit me at all.
You had a moment at Wimbledon when you fell on the express train track because you were drunk.
I'd often fall asleep on the train. And I woke with a jolt because the train, and I went like that. And I saw On. And I thought, I was going to Surbiton. And oh, Christ, I opened the door and I fell onto the track. And I scrambled up onto the platform. And 5 minutes later, the 9:23 to...
Wow.
Went by, but I was arrested by the transport police, who were very good. I mean, just at least being bloody stupid. No, give me a real telling off.
Mary said that drink made you ugly.
Yeah. She's just used the word that I didn't want to hear about myself. You know, your problem is when you get drunk, you're ugly. What? You know, I mean, and she was right. And so I more or less stopped straight away.
You met Mary for the first time in a rather unusual place.
I met her on top of a bus, yeah. And this vision in a red duffel coat, with golden hair, golden red hair, got on and sat in front of me. I thought I could look at that face for a long time. I thought, yeah.
And you have.
And I have, yeah.
Remember your first date together?
No, well, it had a problem. I mean, I was engaged and she was engaged.
You were both engaged?
Yes. So I know it's terrible.
That is complicated.
I know. Anyway, I went to the Denham Hotel in Doncaster and she was dancing with her boyfriend who was in the RAF. And I thought, this is my chance. So I interrupted them on the dance floor.
You split up Mary from her own fiancé and took the next dance.
And it wasn't my dancing that enchanted her. I don't know what it was at all.
You've managed to have this rock-solid marriage. What do you think the secret of a happy marriage and true love is?
I don't think you can lecture people about this at all. It's a great amount of luck. And, you know, Mary and I have been in a situation where we will willingly walk out on one another throughout our career. We certainly
Have you come close to breaking?
Oh, I once actually had my bags and standing outside our house. Mind you, she'd packed the bags. Not me, pal.
Helen Mirren was a guest in 1975. Infamous appearance on Parkinson. You introduced her as the sex queen of the Royal Shakespeare Company. You said that she was good at sluttish eroticism. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Watching it now, it is quite uncomfortable, actually, to watch that, isn't it? I mean,
You feel uncomfortable. What about me?
Yeah. How do you feel watching that?
Oh, I feel it was of its time. And of its time, it was embarrassing.
She said since, I was so young and inexperienced, and he was such an effing sexist old fart. He denies to this day that it was sexist. I mean, I think the evidence is fairly overwhelming.
Well, it was over the top, absolutely so.
Sexist?
Well, maybe. But nobody got hurt, nobody died.
Have you talked to Helen Mirren about it?
Oh, yeah, I've interviewed her since.
Have you ever really addressed it?
No, don't need to. She said what she had to say, I said what I had to say, and that's the end of it. It's very interesting, you know, when you look at... I look at some of my old shows and I cringe. I cringe at myself. I cringe at the way I am, the way I'd say certain things, or phrases that I use. But you have to understand that was 60 years ago.
Right.
I would have dealt with it very differently now.
George Best was another megastar that you're most affiliated with. And you were very good friends with George, really, from the early days.
Yeah. I loved George. I mean, I just, you know, he became a member of our family and all that sort of thing. And you wanted him to listen to you and say, George, look, for Christ's sake, stop drinking. But he didn't, he couldn't. Sad. Really sad.
You used to play in your back garden.
Yeah, I mean...
with your sons, Mike Jr. is here, and used to play football with George Best. Apparently, he used to tell his teachers he'd be doing this, and they would punish you.
Not believe it.
For making it up.
I told George about this, and George said, give me that ball. It is perfectly true that Michael Parkinson played football with me at his dad's house, full stop. Best of wishes, George Best.
You interviewed Clint Eastwood, and afterwards, you're standing there with your wife, you and Mary.
Who's smitten.
Who's smitten, who loves Clint Eastwood, right? Clint Eastwood says, look, I'm just going out for dinner. Why don't you guys join us?
Yeah.
To which your response to Clint Eastwood is, actually, I'm in for an early night, thanks, mate. True story.
True. She gave me hell about that.
I bet she probably still does.
She didn't say a word for about 20 miles in the car, and then she said, I cannot believe it.
Parky, it's Clint Eastwood.
I know. You're right. Don't get me crying again.
How did you feel about the return of the Parkinson show?
To start with, basically, I knew, I didn't think, I knew I was a better interviewer. I knew that. Because you know, you grow into it.
Yeah.
And as the older you get, the better you get at
Yeah.
it. The more confidence you have, your timing is better, and all that sort of. So I knew I would do a better show. And also, too, there was a new generation of actors and actresses to talk to. I enjoyed that series so much, and it worked. It worked really well. So, you know, I've been very lucky from that point of view.
You were a breakfast TV presenter. Now, it's a very difficult thing to do, breakfast television. It takes a certain type of genius, really, to put it off, I think. And it didn't go well for you, Michael.
No, it did not. It did not.
What's surprising about that? When you look at the cast list, you're some of the biggest names in television.
Yeah, but that was one of the problems as well. You know, the ego started getting in the way, and, you know, partners were not happy with the way that their partner was being treated, so to speak, and all that started happening.
When Anna Ford and Angela Rippon were sacked, did part of you think, I've got to go?
Well, there was a bigger picture going on, which I was aware of, but I also did think they'd been treated badly by the management. It wasn't their fault, it was the management fault. It was being very badly run. We cocked it up, there's no two ways about it, and, you know, we got it wrong.
When you watch breakfast television now, do you think, oh, that's how we should have done it? Only we'd had that guy.
Well, let's put it this way, I'd hate to follow you, I really would.
You've interviewed over 2,000 of the world's most famous people. I know it's a difficult question, but do you have a favourite moment from them all?
For humour, Billy Connolly, every single time. He made me laugh more than anybody else, apart from Dame Edna. Dame Edna was possibly the woman I'd most like to sort of find out more about.
Well, I was going to ask you about Billy Connolly, because there's been a lot of stuff in the press about you two, that you commented after seeing him that he just wasn't himself anymore. And we know that he's been very ill.
The observation I was making, and that he'd slowed down a bit, was not a diagnosis. It was an observation of a friend to another friend. It was an awards thing I did with him, and he was on heavy medication, and he stopped me and he put his hands on my shoulder, and he said to me, how long have we known each other? And I thought, maybe wrongly, he didn't really know who I was. Bill and I had known each other 40, 50 years. I wrote him a letter. I'd sat down and said, look, there is no way in this world I would hurt you. No way I would deliberately demean you or whatever. And I tried to explain. And I got a lovely reply from him saying, let's go back to where we were old friends.
Great.
That was it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
2008, your mum, Frida, sadly passed away. She was 96 years old.
She was.
Towards the end of her life, she had dementia, and that was obviously tough for all of you, I guess.
It was tough, but also it had its, as it does have its weird and humorous moments. One day she said, your dad's down the pub, you know. And I said, Mum, Dad's not down the pub. How do you know? I said, Dad's dead. She was, what? I said, he's dead. She said, nobody told me. Then she said to me, if your dad is dead, answer me this. Who did I climb over to get out of bed this morning?
That moment when you're told you've got cancer, what went through your mind?
fear. What am I going to do now about it? How do I address it? What advice do I take? Shall we tell the kids? But I was lucky. I recovered. I got through it. It changed me in many ways. It's bound to. It gives you a view of the possibility you're going to die. But I was far more worried, and people were far more worried about the back operation I had.
You had to almost learn to walk again.
Yeah, that's right. And that was a problem. I walked like I've had plenty of practice. I did at one point of learning how to walk like a drunk. So this is not far.
You regressed back to your drunk walking days. Yeah,
yeah, precisely. No, I'm fine. I mean, I really am. I'd like to be able to feel a lot stronger than I do sometimes, but there's a lot to do still.
You got knighted and the Queen tapped you on the shoulder. Pretty special day.
It was. Strangely, the only thing I remember about that day is a cringing moment. We were instructed on what we should do, which is terribly important, is that when she's tapped you on the shoulder, said a few words to you, stand and you walk backwards. Do not turn your back on the Queen. It's exactly what I did. And I'm halfway through my third stride, and I thought, I might as well head straight for the tower.
Parky, it's been a great honour for me.
Pleasure.
It really has. The final question is an obvious one for me, which is, how have I done? You can be honest.
I think you're very good at what you do. You know that.
Well, that's not the right answer, is it?
But
What's
tonight,
the but?
But, well, tonight's the but. I mean, God almighty, it's only having hours. It's past my bedtime. No, I've enjoyed it very much indeed.
I mean, you talk about you should never meet your heroes, but tonight I've interviewed my interviewing hero, and it's been everything I hoped it would be. So thank you very much.
Thank you.